I moved into the apartment because it was cheap, not because it felt right. It was a fourth-floor walk-up in an aging brick building on the edge of the city, far enough from downtown to be affordable, but still close enough to catch a bus when I needed it. The place had that stale, abandoned smell, like someone had locked it up for a long time and never bothered to clean before handing over the keys. Tenant died. The landlord muttered when I asked why it was so empty. Natural causes. Elderly guy. Quiet. Lived alone. I didn't press. I needed a place, and this was the first I could afford without a roommate. After what happened with my last one, well, let's just say I was ready to live alone again. The first 2 nights were uneventful. I unpacked, got the internet working, picked up some basic groceries, and started mentally adjusting to the creaks and groans of the old building. It wasn't until the 3rd night that I noticed the writing. It was small, faint, almost invisible unless you were standing in just the right light. I was lying on my back in bed, staring up at the white ceiling in the bedroom, when I noticed it, just above me, scrawled in pencil or maybe faded pen. Help me. 3 shaky letters, uneven and desperate. And below it, in smaller handwriting, barely visible unless I squinted. He watches from the corner. I sat up so fast I nearly knocked over the bedside lamp. I stared at the ceiling for a while, heart pounding. My first instinct was that it was a prank. Maybe the landlord had a weird sense of humor. Maybe the previous tenant left it, and no one thought to clean it up. Or maybe, and this seemed more likely, it was just one of those things you find in old apartments, like odd smells, or rusty pipes, or forgotten holes in the wall. Still, I stood on a chair and scrubbed the ceiling with a damp sponge until the words disappeared. I told myself I imagined the second sentence. I had to, because he watches from the corner felt different. Like a warning. I didn't sleep well that night. The next morning, I woke up to the sponge lying in the middle of the floor. Not just dropped, placed. Like someone had picked it up, walked to the center of the room, and set it down. The ceiling above it was clean. No writing. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. That night, around 2:30 a.m., I woke up without knowing why. No noise. No light. Just that feeling of something being off, like the silence had teeth. I rolled over to face the wall and froze. In the far corner of my room, across from my bed, the shadows looked too thick. Like someone was standing there. Watching. Waiting. I blinked. Rubbed my eyes. Reached for my phone and turned on the flashlight. Nothing. Just a corner. Just my coat rack with my hoodie on it. I even laughed a little, nervously but still. Classic spooky apartment moment. Until I looked back at the ceiling. The words were there again. Help me. He watches from the corner. And now, in a 3rd line beneath it, one that hadn't been there before. Don't look at him. I stared up at the ceiling in silence. The new line looked freshly written. The letters darker, sharper, like whoever, or whatever, had scrawled them wanted me to notice this time. I grabbed my phone, turned on the camera light again, and stood up slowly, never looking toward the corner. The rule was clear, don't look at him. Whatever he was, he apparently didn't like attention. I took a photo of the ceiling, and for a moment, it gave me a weird comfort. Proof. I wasn't losing my mind. I wasn't imagining the messages. I had evidence now. But when I checked the gallery, the photo was just blank. White. As if the flash had erased everything. The writing wasn't there anymore. The next day, I called my landlord. He laughed. Writing on the ceiling? Buddy, that place got repainted last month. I asked about the previous tenant. Old man. Real quiet. Barely talked to anyone. Died in his sleep, far as I know. I asked if he'd ever mentioned anything strange. His voice shifted, just a bit. Not really. Said something once about shadows being too loud. Whatever that means. Why? I didn't answer. Just thanked him and hung up. That night, I slept with the lights on. It didn't help. Around 3:12 a.m., the lights blinked out. Just for a second. But long enough for the entire room to feel different when they came back on. The air was heavier. The shadows thicker. And the corner? The one I hadn't looked at since the warning? It felt like it was breathing. I rolled onto my side, away from it, and pulled the blanket over my head like a child. I lay there for what felt like hours, trying to keep my breathing steady, trying not to think, until I heard a sound. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Slow, rhythmic. From the ceiling. It was directly above me, like someone was dragging a fingernail across the drywall, carving something in. I wanted to run, but I was frozen. When I finally got the courage to peek, the lights flickered again, this time staying off for a full 3 seconds. And in that moment of darkness, I swear I felt something crawl across the bed. Not heavy, just enough to leave a cold ripple across my skin. When the light came back on, I was drenched in sweat. Nothing was on the bed. The room was empty, except the ceiling. Now there were more words. He lives between the seconds. Blink, and he moves. That morning, I left the apartment. I called in sick. I walked aimlessly. I called in sick. I walked aimlessly through the city just to stay moving, to stay out of that room. Coffee shops, bookstores, anywhere with noise and people. But even then, I couldn't stop thinking about the words. He lives between the seconds. Blink, and he moves. I tried researching it, ghost stories, urban legends, anything that mentioned watchers in corners or messages on ceilings. Reddit was no help. Most posts were creepypasta nonsense. A few stories felt eerily close. One about a kid who saw faces every time he blinked. Another about a woman whose mirror reflections whispered warnings. But nothing that fit my exact experience. I wasn't sure what was worse, thinking this was real, or realizing I might be the only one it was happening to. Eventually, I forced myself to go home. I couldn't afford a hotel, and I couldn't explain to anyone why I was so afraid of my own bedroom. The apartment was quiet when I returned. I flipped on every light. I even walked straight into the bedroom and, this time, forced myself to look at the corner. Nothing, just walls. Still, I dragged my dresser across the room and wedged it into the corner. I knew it was stupid. If something wanted to stand there, a dresser wouldn't stop it. But psychologically, I needed that illusion of control. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed with my eyes wide open, watching the ceiling. Nothing moved. No writing appeared. No lights flickered. It was a full 24 hours of silence. Until the next evening. That's when the photo changed. Remember the one I took of the ceiling? The one where the writing didn't show up? Well, I was scrolling through my gallery before bed, and I saw something new. The image was no longer blank. There were eyes in it. 2 of them, just barely visible in the top left of the frame. Wide, sunken, watching. Like someone had been crouching in the top corner of my room when I took the shot. Just out of view, but not out of frame. And under the image, the timestamp had changed. It didn't say 2:41 a.m. anymore. It said 3:12 a.m. The same time the lights had gone out. The same time I heard the scratch on the ceiling. I started sleeping in the living room after that. I moved the mattress to the floor near the TV, left the bedroom door shut, and piled towels under the crack so I couldn't see the gap. And for a few nights, it helped. Until the scratching started again, this time from the ceiling above the living room. I lost it. I stood on a chair and screamed at the plaster like an idiot. What do you want? Silence. Then, one soft thump, like a hand lightly tapping from the other side. I got off the chair. I didn't sleep that night. I barely even sat down. I just paced the apartment in circles, checking the windows, turning lights on and off, staring at the ceiling and daring it to change again. By dawn, I was delirious. But something about the light made me feel brave again. I showered. I ate breakfast. I decided to check the bedroom one last time. And when I opened the door, it was cold. Much colder than the rest of the apartment. The air smelled faintly of dust and something else, like wet stone. I looked up at the ceiling. There were no words. But someone had carved a single phrase into the drywall above where the dresser used to be. He doesn't need corners anymore. I left the apartment again. I didn't care that I couldn't afford it. I didn't care that I left my laptop, my bed, half my clothes behind. I packed a duffel bag and went straight to a cheap motel across town with buzzing lights and peeling wallpaper and the kind of yellow sheets that felt like they'd been washed 1,000 times too few. It didn't matter. For the first time in a week, I felt safe. I kept my phone on the nightstand and played white noise through a speaker. I even left the bathroom light on, just in case. The first night, nothing happened. The second, I dreamed about the ceiling. I saw it cracking open like paper, something long and jointless crawling out. A shape with too many elbows, whispering words I couldn't understand. When I woke, my jaw ached from clenching. On the third day, I got a call. Blocked number. I never answer those. But this time, my thumb moved on its own. Hello. Silence. Then, scratching. Slow. Precise. Like fingernails dragging across wood. And faintly, beneath it, a whisper. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was pleading. Begging. Then a click. The line went dead. I told myself it was just prank calls. I was jumpy. I was paranoid. But by the end of the week, I realized something worse than the messages on the ceiling, the cold bedroom, the whispers in my phone. I wasn't alone in the motel room. I noticed it on the 7th night. While brushing my teeth, I glanced in the bathroom mirror and saw something move behind me. Just a flicker. A shape that didn't match anything in the room. When I turned around, there was nothing there. I stared at the mirror, at the spot behind me. Then I stepped out, turned off the light, and watched from the hallway. It was subtle, but it was there. A faint shape in the mirror, as if the glass reflected something the eye couldn't see. The room looked empty, but the reflection was full. I went back to the apartment. I know how that sounds. I should have stayed gone. But the motel was no longer safer than the place I left. And at least in the apartment, I had walls that were mine. I walked in slowly, holding my breath. Nothing moved. No shadows in the corners. No sudden cold. But the air still felt aware. Like the apartment itself had been waiting for me. The bedroom door was open. I didn't leave it that way. I stepped inside. The ceiling was blank. Perfectly clean. The floor undisturbed. But on the walls now, faint as breath fog on glass, were handprints. Hundreds of them. Too small to be adult. Too long to be child. Some upright. Some sideways. Some upside down. As if whatever they belonged to didn't care about gravity. And in the middle of the wall, above where my bed used to be, there were more words. He's in the space between your blinks. You brought him with you. You always do. I dropped to my knees. It wasn't the apartment. It was me. Whatever this thing was, it followed me. The motel. The calls. The mirror. It didn't matter where I went. I covered the wall with a blanket and curled up in the corner like a terrified kid. And for the first time in years, I prayed. Not to God. Not exactly. But to anyone listening who wasn't him. I didn't leave the apartment the next day. I was afraid of what I'd bring with me. Instead, I stayed in the living room with the lights on, windows open, and every reflective surface covered. The TV screen, my phone, even the metal toaster. Anything that could reflect even the shape of a shadow, I blocked it out. I barely ate. I barely moved. And the worst part? I started seeing him when I blinked. Just flashes at first. Like burn in on a screen. A shape in the corner of my eye that disappeared the second I focused. But after hours of staying awake, of fighting the weight behind my eyes, the flashes grew clearer. He was tall. Too tall. His skin was wrong. Pale, but not white. Like damp concrete. His arms hung low, like they didn't belong to him. And his head, it tilted, like it was listening. The second I closed my eyes, he got closer. And then I understood the writing. He lives between the seconds. Blink, and he moves. Don't look at him. It wasn't a warning. It was a manual. I started researching sleep deprivation. Apparently, hallucinations kick in around day 3. Paranoia, audio distortion, visual ghosts. But I was on day 5. And this wasn't just ghosts. I recorded myself sleeping once, just to prove to myself that this was all in my head. I set up my phone, aimed at the couch where I now slept, and hit record. I took melatonin, drank 3 cups of chamomile tea, and waited until my body betrayed me. When I woke, I checked the footage immediately. At first, it was just me, tossing and turning, mumbling in my sleep. Then, at 3:12 a.m., the lights flickered. The image glitched. And for 7 seconds, exactly 7, he was in the frame, standing over me, perfectly still, watching. Then the screen pixelated and jumped, and he was gone. I watched it over and over, slowed it down frame by frame. No footsteps, no transition, just gone. And when I paused the video at the last second, my own eyes were open, wide open. But I didn't look awake. I looked empty. I stopped sleeping entirely after that. It wasn't sustainable, but I didn't care. I walked at night, paced grocery stores at 2 a.m., scrolled through Reddit rabbit holes and conspiracy blogs like they held answers. And one night, I found something. A forum post, dated 2012, long since archived. It was titled, "Do Not Look at the Thing in the Corner." The post was short, just a few lines. He comes in when you blink. You'll hear him first, scratching, like chalk, then whispering. He only stops when you sleep or die. Cover your eyes, cover your mirrors, never answer calls at 3:12 a.m. Whatever you do, don't let him know you see him. There was only one reply. Too late. He wrote on my ceiling too. That was last night. Now, as I write this, my hands are shaking. I haven't slept in almost 6 days. Every time I blink, he gets closer. I feel him just behind the wall, just outside the door. Sometimes I see his fingers curling around the edge of the hallway like he's practicing how to come in. I don't know how much longer I can hold him back. And just now, the light in the hallway flickered. Exactly once. It's 3:11 a.m. It's 3:12 a.m. The second the clock ticked over, the temperature dropped. My breath fogged in the air. The hallway light turned off by itself. My phone screen went black. Even the hum of the refrigerator stopped, like the whole building was holding its breath. And then, the scratching started again. Not from the ceiling this time. From inside the walls. Faster. Closer. Like he didn't need to hide anymore. I backed into the living room, whispering no, no, no under my breath, clutching the only thing I had left, my phone, flashlight still off, useless. I didn't dare blink. My eyes burned. My vision doubled. But I held on. The scratching moved upward, to the ceiling. Then, silence. Until the drywall above my head cracked open like paper. And a hand slipped through. It was long and gray, with too many joints, the fingers tipped in splintered nails. It groped blindly, feeling the air like it didn't quite understand gravity. Then another hand appeared beside it. Then part of a head, tilted unnaturally sideways, pushed through the crack. Its mouth was closed, but I heard it whisper, "You brought me back." I screamed and threw the phone at it, stumbled out the door barefoot, down the stairs, out into the street, where the cold night air burned my lungs. I didn't stop running until sunrise. I've been sleeping in my car since that night. I haven't been back to the apartment. I haven't told anyone. What would I even say? I know how it sounds. I know what it looks like from the outside. Sleep deprivation, delirium, paranoia. But every time I blink, I still see him. Closer. Smiling now. He's in reflections again. This morning, I caught a glimpse of him in the side mirror of my car. Not standing. Not crouching. Just waiting. And I think I know why. He doesn't want me dead. He wants me exhausted. He wants me broken. Sleepless. Paralyzed. Because that's when he moves. I went back once. Just to grab my things. I waited until noon. Sun bright. The street alive with people. I went in quickly, refusing to look at the ceiling, refusing to acknowledge the corner of the room. But there was something new, scrawled across every inch of the walls in giant, looping letters. I don't know how I missed it before. You were never alone. You just started looking. Everyone has a ceiling. That was all. I left everything behind. Now, I write this as a warning. If you've ever seen something move in the corner of your eye, if you've ever felt watched in a perfectly empty room, if you've ever found writing where none should be, don't look at it. Don't blink. And above all, don't look at your ceiling after 3:12 a.m.